Welcome, everybody. I want to do a fun live stream here to celebrate the launch of Luke Bloody Tooth Issue 1 Kickstarter. And like I said, we got a little bit of horror here in May. And today I am joined by a very cool guy. And he just finished up his campaign, if I'm not mistaken, on Purity. And we'll have some reveals here today. We'll talk comics, talk pretty much whatever you guys want to talk about. But I'm going to bring on Nick Capone and we'll just start going from here. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, how's it going, man? Congrats on the launch.
Thanks. We are almost halfway to goal.
Perfect.
So yeah, about 250 so far. So that's nice. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, how's it been? I mean, how'd Purity go? Well, I mean, that
Great.
seemed pretty successful.
Yeah, thanks, man. It went pretty well. A little slower this time around, but I'm like I said, it's just I think the algorithm, but ultimately, it's going. Book's practically done. I have less than 2 pages left to color actually, and then once the Kickstarter money kicks in, we're going off to the printer, and then I get to
Nice.
prepare for the next launch in August.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's indie creator there in a nutshell. I work a full-time day job and I do this on the side, and it's work your job to support your art, and hopefully one day that art will support itself.
Yeah. No, it's a lot, man. Like it's Kickstarter does this thing where it allows you to not launch but make numerous campaigns at once, and
Hmm.
I'm essentially working on like three new campaigns, like the format of it all. While Purity was even launched, I was like, man, maybe I shouldn't do this right now. But it's like so they make it so easy. Like I could just like make a new campaign literally right now. Like, and it's
Yeah.
like, but yeah, no, it keeps me busy. I fortunately like I'm an instructor at the Joe Kubert School, so I teach
Nice.
art, and then I also work I color primarily. So I've colored for Dynamite, IDW. I've done some stuff with Archie, a couple things with Image. Um, and then a lot of indie stuff. I'm currently coloring Ninja Witch by Justin and Amy Hunt from
Okay.
Mutant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're currently on book 5. I'm wrapping up the colors probably the next 2 weeks, and yeah, so that's a really fun book. It's a lot of things going on in the best way possible, like a lot of action and
Yeah.
everything. But it's really a great book. I'm very fortunate to have colored 4 out of the 5 issues, and it's uh, it's one of my favorite projects I've worked on as a
That's
colorist.
cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's Justin was at ECC a couple months ago. And he was at fellow Pacific Northwester. We're up in Seattle. Well, I'm up in Seattle, and so he was there with Mountain West Productions, I do believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there, but I think it's Mountain West. Brian Dorsey is the guy that does a lot of books. He's a novelist. He's done some short films. I did some colors for him on a couple of his books, but like yeah, Justin's been doing stuff with him, and he gets like this huge, like 20 by 20 booth or something.
Yeah.
And, just because like with all the books Justin's got, with all the books that Brian has, it's kind of like they can fill that space.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's funny you mentioned that. I was this close. Justin invited me out to ECC, um, at ECCC. I
yeah.
keep getting that the
Oh no, I,
abbreviation
I call
wrong.
it ECC.
Yeah, ECC. But yeah, no, I was this close to going, but last minute I was like, oh, I couldn't swing it. So
Yeah.
hopefully next year, because I hear from a few people it's a very big show, and like especially like since I'm on the East Coast, a lot of guys I know go there. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, like slowly I'm gonna start venturing out to the West Coast, like show wise.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like we mentioned it, I was talking in chat, like there's quite a bit of shows out here. ECC obviously is the I would say by attendance the largest one, but I wouldn't say it's definitely the best one out here.
Hmm.
unfortunately, like it's just the way we pop it. I mean, comic people in general, we all kind of have the same gripes around
Yeah.
some things, and conventions are one of those things we kind of gripe about. For me, I think maybe it was just like not the right vibe for maybe the art or whatever it is. It was just kind of my first year, so I'm gonna try to go back next year and see, how well that works out. I'll have more books obviously for next year, but it's a lot of foot traffic,
Hmm.
so you just kind of have to kind of weigh like foot traffic versus sales versus meeting people versus just the whole networking of
Hmm.
getting out there and doing all that. But
Yeah.
huge show, a lot of fun. SummerCon is another show that's just south of Seattle that probably is like really picking up a lot of steam in the last few years, and that seems to be like the better show. Um, but I did that for a few years, several years. It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
The other one I wanted to always tackle was Hornfest. I know it's like I think like only a day or a day. Like I don't know if it's financially feasible just to travel to. I think that's in Washington or Arizona.
Wait,
Uh,
what was it?
Brian Polito show Swarnfest.
Well, I think that, well, my best guess, I would say that that's in Arizona because that's where Brian's at.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not like for if it was like a whole weekend, like if it's like a 3 day show, then yeah, like I would definitely. But it's like to fly for like one day. I don't
Yeah.
know. You know what I mean? Like I have to prepare for that. But like I mean, there's a lot of awesome shows also where I'm at. Like I'm a huge advocate for. There's a line of shows called the Garden State Comic Fest. It's a
Hmm.
possibly the biggest running convention in New Jersey because there's like numerous. There's like the regular show in June, which is a big show. It's on a hockey rink. And then they have their Winter Fest. That's in January. And then they have an Anime Fest, their first, well, they've been doing it for like 2 years now, their anime convention. And then they just opened up a new location near Philadelphia. So they're pretty much taking over the whole state with their shows. Uh, it's a really good show because it's really for the creators, artists,
Hmm.
collectors. Like one thing, I'm not trying to throw Fan Expo under the bus, but like they're like the perfect example of
Hmm.
that's not a comic convention anymore. You're really
Yeah.
catering to like anime voice actors and
Hmm.
Funko Pops. Like the only I only tabled at Fan Expo for myself twice, and both times I've either barely just made it or I didn't do well, and it really was because of the foot traffic was more geared towards just like I said, like just the pop culture stuff. They shouldn't even call them comic conventions. They're just
Yeah.
pop culture shows.
Yeah, I agree. And that's how ECC is. It is absolutely geared. It is, I mean, I call it pop culture because it's not a Comic Con. Um, SummerCon seems to still be, um, well, it's at the Washington State Fairgrounds. So you have
Yeah.
like a whole huge fairground to have a convention. They don't take up the whole fairground, but they use a lot of the buildings. So like gaming has its own building. Artist Alley, we have our own building, which is really nice because the people that are there to see
Yeah.
independent artists and stuff like that. And we really don't get like mixed in with a lot of the exhibitors. So I mean, it's a lot of fun just kind of doing the tour. There's another one in Tacoma that's a 1 day show that's really good, and that's a little bit smaller, but it's like you're saying, it's for the creators, it's for people like us
Yeah.
that do our books.
Yeah, I'm
And
noticing too by me they're starting to cater to independent creators. Like I
yeah.
think in Connecticut there's Indie Creator Con or Indie Comics Con
Okay.
or something like that. A few of my buddies went and they said it was a pretty well attended show. But that was like I'm happy to see that they're still catering to indie, and then there's also Terrificon in Connecticut, which I hear is an incredible show. It's like really all art
Yeah.
centered. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. I haven't done anything outside of Washington State. It's just like, as you know, I mean, it's super expensive. It can just, between the travel, the airfare, the show, bringing all your stuff, even, and I'd almost not even bring my original art. I would just go kind of almost, I don't know, low scale. Just, bring what I can, and bring a couple bins of comics, and
Yeah.
bring, a lot of the art prints and stuff like that that
Well, I'll
I
tell you that
sell.
that brings up a good point because like I am notorious. I pack very light. Setup and
Yeah.
breakdown in total could be only 30 minutes in full.
Hmm.
So it's like I pack light because I think over the years I find out what sells for me and what doesn't. And like, really for me, books and originals sell. So it's like I really don't cater to prints that much. Like I'll be honest, a lot of the prints that uh, people see at my convention table are like, this is gonna sound awful, but like recycled prints from like, say if I got comp copies of a book that I was on and like it came with like 30 prints and then I'm like, I don't know what to do with all these prints, so I'm just gonna bring them at conventions. I don't have to pay for prints. Or prints that didn't sell last year, I bring them this year. If it sells,
Yeah.
great. If it doesn't, but like ultimately, like prints are not my like my best seller. But
Interesting.
if I get them from someone or like
Hmm.
I'll put them on my table, and if it sells, it sells. But
Yeah.
really, I've noticed that I just sell a lot of books. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. Like I sell two different series. I sell like my Purity series, and then
Hmm.
I also co-created Reign of Ages with Sonoma Publishing.
Okay.
So that's more like my Dungeons and Dragons book.
Ooh.
So that also like that has more of like an anime style. So I usually push the sales for that at anime conventions.
Yeah.
But ultimately I just sell books. And then like my portfolio's there and I have like a few originals in there. So they sell. But yeah, I pack very light. It's like bad.
That's
Like
yeah. That's interesting that, like, just talk, and I've talked with other creators, like, when I'm at shows, and it's just, I see you start setting up and you see people just like have this huge like thing of, I fit everything in like a little cart.
yeah.
Like, honestly, you know and I tried a couple different things at ECC, and just, setups. It's kind of weird how you wouldn't think like switching things around and moving things changes sales.
Mhm.
And I mean, we all want to sell our artwork, right? We have a lot of fans out there. And speaking of Purity, do you have, I don't know if you have late pledges available, still
I
going?
so I kind of it was brought to my attention like at the very tail end of the campaign, and I was like,
Okay.
well, shit, I should probably not do it now, but I'm gonna see if I could do it for the new campaign in August because
Hmm.
I heard so many people praise the whole late pledges thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was
Well,
like,
I mean, I'd love to share what, at
yeah,
least issue, what do you got? Issue three I have here.
yeah.
And so, I mean, this is issue three, and I mean, it's successfully funded. That's a, for indie guys, I mean, that's a hell of a number there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, you said Sky Maiden Studios, okay?
Yep, that's my
Uh,
publisher.
yeah, and Sexy Purity.
Like,
Um, yeah, speaking of that, it's kind of, this weird thing that we have with, social media, is we, uh, have a lot of social media friends, right? And we don't really know them. We never maybe ever see them in real life. And tell us a little bit about Purity before I go down this rabbit hole of social media. What do
so
we got here?
so Purity is essentially just my love letter to the '90s. I obviously, as a kid in the '90s, I read a lot of Image stuff, in which
Hmm.
loved Lady Death. As I got a little older, I started reading more of like Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose by Jim
Hmm.
Ballant. Like I always loved like the prominent female characters. I
Hmm.
love like the sexy female characters, and I just thought they were badass. And I had this character I made back in like middle school, and 15 plus years later, this is our Purity right now. So
Hmm.
he is a character I've been making for like over a decade, and essentially, she's a Puritan who was wrongfully accused of witchcraft
Hmm.
in Salem witch trials by her sister, who's the actual witch, and she made kind of like a deal with the devil, and Purity was enslaved in the underworld for 500 years, and then finds out that her sister was the reason that she was sent there, and she wanted to seek revenge. So she
Hmm.
escaped the gates of hell, and to seek revenge on her sister and find her and bring her back down to the underworld where she rightfully belongs. And she it pretty much Purity is a spoof of Little Nicky by Adam Sandler. So
Yeah. Nice.
she escapes the underworld, Little Nicky style, and freezes the gates in the process. Pisses Satan off because now no new souls can come in. So
Hmm.
Purity, so Satan sends two bounty hunters, Vex and Amadeus, up to retrieve Purity and bring her back down for eternal punishment. And so Satan can receive souls to fuel her power. So this is the hunt part two. So the whole idea of the hunt is Purity's on the hunt for her sister with not realizing that she also is being hunted. So
Nice.
it's kind of like almost like a cat and mouse um,
Hmm.
kind of style of story. And then issue 4 is like the big brawl. Not to give too much away, but
Yeah.
it's very exciting. But yeah, like I said, it's really my love letter to all things '90s. If you love, like I said, characters like Lady Death, if you love She, if you love
Hmm.
Evangeline, this book is for you. Like
Yeah.
Purity has garnered the nickname the heroic Hellion. So
Nice.
she's kind of, yeah, that's literally what she is. She's a heroic, like demon like character.
Hmm.
But yeah, like it's a really fun book. She's a really fun character. I have so much in store. I have a campaign coming out in August that features it's basically a reissue of issue 1 and with a brand new
Okay.
cover by Courtney Rose. And then after that, I'm launching issue 4 in March, and the cover's all done for that. I'm waiting on a few more cover artists, and
Hmm.
it's a fun ride. And then at the end of next year, I'm going to be launching the trade paperback. So we're going to be getting a full compilation of the first 4 issues, plus a first time of me announcing this to anybody. But the cool thing about the trade paperback I'm planning on doing is I'm also going to be including anywhere like a 22-page Satan one shot in the back. So
Oh.
it's an exclusive story to the trade. I've learned in the past 3 issues that people love Satan, and it's beyond being a Satanist. I'm not a
Yeah.
Satanist, but like they just love the character, and
Hmm.
they really enjoyed my rendition of Satan. So I wanted to kind of give back to the fans a little bit and dive more into her lore.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I said, it's a really really fun book.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. And, what's really kind of interestingly ironic in a weird way is to kind of touch on um, the social media thing here is, I mean, the art looks great. The story, it's super fun. It was one of those things where we have all these social media friends and we really don't know like who they are. They're just like kind of almost like an avatar. But in this weird thing, like you just kind of randomly reached out to me a couple weeks ago, I think, and it just this like organic relationship kind of formed, and we were like,
Yeah,
oh, here's Purity, here's this, and hey, do you want to do this crossover? We could cross promote. So as we do with as indie creators, I've done this as well. Like we tend to promote each other's work just to get more eyes on it. We tend to
yeah,
reach out and it just was this interesting thing, and you're like, hey, do you want to do a pinup? And I start, you send me a couple digital copies with all the Purity stuff, and I start reading through it, and I'm like, this is really cool. Like it's right up my alley, and it's definitely down the alley of Dark Space Studios, because like on the Dark Space Studios website, it is the darker side of comics, right?
yeah,
So I tend to write stuff more just darker themes, nothing, some risque stuff, but it's more like almost down the path of, Ice Pick was more of my throwback to 90s, and this is the trade
yeah.
paperback for Ice Pick. And what was fun with Ice Pick is I ended up showing all the old um, pages when
Oh,
I
I
was like
love
16.
that.
Yeah, bro, it's like some terrible artwork, and people loved it. I did like 20. 24 something, over 20 pages. I hand cut pages to fit. This was back in mid 90s, right? The whole image boom. And that's again, like you, I mean, that's where my love for comics came. And as I start diving into like purity, we're talking about it. It's like your love letter to the 90s. Ice Pick is my love letter
Yeah.
to the 90s. And that's where like the revenge image, over the top storytelling, that's Ice Pick, you know.
Yeah.
And Annabelle is kind of like the strong female character, and she finds out she's got magic powers, and her parents were in a witch coven and all these things. And so for me to fast forward a little bit to where Luke is at, Luke is basically the third character in my Ice Pig universe. And Luke's story is a horror story. It's all black and white. It's my throwback to like my story of kind of like, hey, 90s horror, but also like go back to even earlier, like 70s, 80s black and white
Yeah.
horror books.
Absolutely.
So I'll show the campaign here, but I do want to show what we kind of you reached out to me on, um doing a piece for Purity, because you really liked Annabelle, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll throw Annabelle in there, and I'll
Yeah.
throw
I think what I
throw
like it, and like it's just like real talk here. It's just I'm very picky with bad girl books because I feel like, especially in recent times, bad girl books get like a weird rep that were just booby books, and
yeah.
I always feel like that is definitely an incorporation into the genre, but I feel like you look at Lady Death, you look at She, you look at
Hmm.
like the Witchblade, like the heavy hitters, and people don't realize that you could have a book with a sexy character, but also it has substance to it. It has
Yeah.
like a good plot, and that's what I felt when I saw Annabelle, and like I backed it a long time ago. But like what I've
Okay.
noticed is that it was like it it has substance. It's not like a
Well,
normal
thanks.
movie book you see on Kickstarter. It's not like you know how some, not to throw shade at anybody, but like there's a lot of booby books. I don't even call them bad girl books anymore. But like
No.
there's books
Yeah.
with no plot and just
Yep.
pure tits and ass. And I'm like, look, there's a market for that. Great, but it's not a
Yeah.
bad girl book. But you, my friend, have a bad girl book, and
Well,
I
thank you. That was kind of the idea. And I throw Fathom in there. Like, you can't see, you see what's behind me, but what's in front of me is my motivation. The wall in front of me is basically, I have a Lady Death print, a Wolverine print, Storm Shadow Snake Eyes, Aliens, because I love aliens, Soulfire from Aspen,
yeah.
and Fathom. And then a little, narcissistic, I have my own Ice Pick books framed on the
Hey,
wall.
hey, you know
um,
something? Like right here, one sec. I do have a giant Lady Death poster right there.
nice.
But like I also graded like that. Like I wanted to grade my book. Like and
Yeah,
I'm just like, you know what? Why not? It was a birthday
yeah.
gift last year to myself. I'm like, let's grade this book. But I have this right next to my desk. So I was
Nice.
like, that's it. You should
And
be proud of your accomplishments. So like I'm all for framing,
yeah.
your comics. So
And then I have like all my nerd shit on shelves. I have
yeah.
like my lightsaber, like Marvin the Martian, big fan of Marvin the Martian,
Mhm.
all that other stuff. So like my office, outside, like even during my day job, I'm in this office like 10 hours a day, so it's got to motivate me. And
Mhm.
Annabelle was one of those stories where, obviously, like I mentioned, Ice Pick was done in the 90s when I was like 16, 15, 16, 17. I started thinking about it, did the whole thing myself. It's kind of like a vanity project comic book, if you're
Mhm.
familiar with that term for movies, because like I do the entire book myself. I wrote it, color, draw. I kind of make myself the star in a way, weird way. And
Mhm.
you have this hot brunette, which my wife, oddly enough, is a brunette. So
Mhm.
the characters were modeled after, in a way, like after people that I was close to. And so for Annabelle, like I did, you mentioned booby books. I did do a lot of research, and I did back Kickstarters that were like these tits and ass books, and I was just like, let me see what's there. And then you're right, you kind of read it, and some have substance, but most don't, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what can I do to bring in some
Yeah.
fun storytelling? I mean, and I'm a big fan of like lore and supernatural and
Me
history.
too. Me
So I
too.
start researching all this, and I found an awesome like Wikipedia page that lists like it's I think it's like 100 mythical creatures, and then they link to other Wikipedia pages so you can read up on the lore. But I love dragons, so I felt like, oh, that makes a really badass villain as a dragon. And then I kind of write my story around this dragon and involve some witches and witchcraft and all this fun stuff. And in Annabelle, Luke finds out that his parents were, part of this witch coven, and he also has magic. So where does he go? He goes to Salem, Massachusetts, because why not? Um, I've been there. It's a fantastic town. My wife and I took a vacation there and just fell in love with it. So I was like, let me throw a little bit of cliche stuff in my
Yeah,
storytelling.
immediately when I wrote up the new story for Purity, like when I kind of like revamped her into like what
Hmm.
she is now, I was like, that was the first location that popped in my head. I'm like, witches, Salem witch trials,
Boom.
Massachusetts.
Yeah. I mean, it totally fits, and I mean, yeah, it's cliche, and for me, like, I think there's something for readers where there's something familiar, so they're like, "Oh, I know this city," or "Yeah, I kind of heard this thing happen, maybe." So there's some familiarity, and but for me, like, hopefully this was something you picked up in Annabelle, was
Yeah.
I take something that people are familiar with, and I really try to do something a little different with. And I mean,
Mhm.
as creators, that's what we all want to do. Like, your rendition of Satan is great, but it's your kind of take on
Yeah.
that character.
Yeah.
And
I, I
yeah,
jokingly
go ahead.
say like doing like and go bouncing off to like even like the research you were talking about, like when I researched like all these different aspects of like I would literally revert back to like my Bibles, not like Bibles, but like I was reading
Yeah.
like the first like trade paperback of Lady Death I have, old Witchblade. I was
Hmm.
reading like a lot of old Bad Girl books that really were like special to me growing up. And it made me after reading them and I'm like, all right, these are undeniably 90s,
Yeah.
but what can I learn from these stories that I can incorporate into my story. And that's
Yeah.
like exactly what it sounds like you were doing, where it's like you with I think it's like it's the phrase I heard where it's like you you do a nod to the classics without being bound by them. And
Yes.
that's kind of what sounds like we're both doing.
Yeah, in our own way. And I'm like, all right, I will put him in Salem, Massachusetts, which is the familiar part of it. But this whole like fairies and vampires, and I'm like, all right, that's kind of cool. You get like super sexy fairies, and you have what typically are, vicious vampires. I mean, aside from the ones that we're never going to talk about that sparkle, typically vampires are like the bad guys. And I mean, we're almost halfway, so that's good. That's a good start.
Yeah.
Um,
For the
you know,
first day, that's really good.
yeah, I'm happy with it. We'll see where we end up, but this basically is what I tell people at shows is Luke is the third part of my trilogy. And Ice Pick is part one, and it tells his story. Annabelle is part two, it tells her story. Luke is part three, and it tells his story. And altogether, these books take place over literally a few days. I love small or movies with small casts, like the original Thing. That's one of my really inspirational kind of writing inspirational things that I go back to. Is it's like a very small cast in a secluded place. It takes place over a couple days, and that's your story. So I tend to challenge myself to write a story that only takes place within like a few days. Uh, and so, I mean, we have my cover here. We have Christian Navarro, if I'm hopefully I say that correctly. Uh, that's his cover, and I wanted to kind of do like the variants would be almost a homage to like the older '70s
Yeah.
um, horror books. Courtney's fantastic cover. I think she joined in on the stream a little bit. Kudos to Dave Kemp. I mean, he came in and just knocked it out of the park with the
Yeah, no,
colors.
beautiful.
Yeah. And then this is Sergio Rey, who is the artist for Annabelle, but he also does like this more digital painterly style. So, I mean, he's a great guy to work with. I really enjoy his art, and I got to find more work for him.
He
So,
kind of reminds you of like old like something you would see like old Goosebumps covers. Remember the
oh
Goosebumps
my
series?
God, yeah,
Like just like ever so
totally.
like it brings me like again like it's undeniably like definitely like 90s, but like
Hmm.
it's like definitely it reminds you of like
Hell
Goosebumps
yeah.
in the
Hell
best
yeah.
way.
That's awesome. And I like to do virgin covers. I kind of unabashedly love virgin covers. So I will always offer virgin covers. And this is one Dave Navarro did. I'm sorry, Christian Navarro. Let me see if I get this. There we go. Get that whole cover in frame. Um yeah, he just kind of out of the blue sent me this cover and was like, "Hey, um feel free to use this for whatever you want." And I'm like, that kind of sums up this story in a way, because when Luke arrives, literally the day after Annabelle, like at the end of Annabelle, he is kind of he's got the chicks in his arms and he's taking an Uber back to the house. Like Luke
Mhm.
is one of these guys that's sort of the wise guy, but he's like the player in a way. Like he's always trying to like hook up with the women, and he
Yeah.
was trying to hook up with Annabelle's sister in Annabelle. Like he's just that kind of guy. And I
Yeah.
think that's a nice kind of change of pace from some of the serious things that we tackle to have that relief there. But Luke ends up flying out to Salem literally the next day, is at a bar getting a drink, after he checks in or whatever. And he's just like, this chick comes up to him and starts talking to him, and he ends up, getting romantically involved. And I mean, this is like, I do love this page. When Christian turned this in, I'm like, Luke's face in that bottom panel is just like epic because he's like confused, but he's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And this town is infested with vampires, and the fairies are kind of the ones keeping the vampires in check. So in this story, the fairies are at the top of the food chain. The vampires are kind of the scum of the magical creatures, in my world. And Luke's just like, man, people, you hooking up out here is a lot of love. And this is where they find like a dead body, and we kind of see like there's typical vampire, holes in the dude's neck.
Activity. Yeah.
And then this
What I
is,
like about his art is he has like a really good sense of composition. Like
hmm
that third panel is like a perfect like the silhouette in the background.
hmm
That is a perfect composition. It's I don't know if you're familiar with Wallywood's 22 panels that always work, but
no.
oh, I'll send it to you. It's a really like that is like it's like the Bible for a lot of comic artists, but it's like that's right out of that. It's a really great reference tool. But but yeah, no, his compositions are fantastic.
That's really cool. Yeah, he does a lot of like, really interesting layouts um in this, like, we're almost like halfway through issue 2. And I set this up as like the main fairy is Rose, and she's kind of like, she ends up becoming the protector of Luke because he's still like, he just found out that he has like magic, he's a magical person.
Mhm.
And the vampires actually, not to give too much away, but they actually feed off magical blood.
Oh, I love
and
that.
and that's actually the, you find out a little bit in issue 2, so minor spoilers, but it's still an interesting, I want to talk about it because I think it's a very interesting art. Thanks for sending that though,
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
um it's a interesting, a dynamic, or just an idea that I had, is that magical creatures were actually the first thing that, God created. It wasn't man, it was magical creatures. And
Mhm.
they were, it's kind of like I explain it in issue 2. So I would say that, like, for those that like this style of artwork and horror, I reveal some really fun things about what vampires do, why they feed on magical blood, why they became like this vicious bloodlust type of creature, in issue 2. But Rose knows this. So the fairies and the vampires have been at this battle for centuries, millenniums. And she knows that Luke is magical. Like they can sense each other, like magical creatures can kind of sense each other. Luke is too new to really understand this. So
Yeah.
she kind of takes him under her wing, and is like, hey, why don't you come back to my house? And this page specifically is like, I was explaining it to in the script as like they're being followed when they leave the bar, but they kind of don't know who's following them, and they stumble upon this dead body. And that's where you start to see like, okay, something's going on in this town. And the challenge with writing like horror in comics is you don't have the video to build the suspense. You have to build
Yeah.
suspense like a still image at a time.
Yeah.
And that's really what I tried to do. I'm a huge fan of horror and sci-fi, things like that. And this is like revealing the main vampire in Salem and that's the woman that Courtney drew.
Oh wow.
And she's the main villain, and she's thousands and thousands of years old. This issue really does just start out with establishing a lot of things, got some stretch goals if we can hit those, all the books, all the different covers and things like that. I do like a bundle for all the covers for anybody that wants all the covers, and I'm actually selling for the first campaign, first time in any campaign I've done, I'm selling the original art of the cover of my cover, the pencils and inks.
Oh wow.
Um,
That's always
so
refreshing to see, though. Like, I'm happy to hear you're like drawing traditionally too. It's not all digital. Like, I try and draw traditional here and there when I have paper. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But I'm happy to see that you did the cover traditionally. Like, I have a rule of that. Like, all the covers that I've drawn are at least one stage is done traditional. So it's like maybe if I digitally pencil it, my inker traditionally inks it, or I
hmm
traditionally
hmm
pencil it and then get traditionally inked. So I'm happy to see that you have a original art for that.
my passion is it's definitely traditional. I mean, like as an artist, I obviously the more we can produce, the more money as artists we can make, which is great. But again, like there's only so many shortcuts I'm willing to take. Like I
Yeah.
don't use AI. Like I mean, in my day job, I understand like that's a whole different thing. I'm like a designer, video kind of person for this financial firm out in Seattle. But I mean, we have used AI to expand backgrounds of landscapes and certain things like that. It's a weird thing for artists right now with this whole AI thing. But I am personally, I'm kind of like against it in a way.
Mhm.
If it can be, I guess, respectfully done, but I don't think responsibly. I never see like AI being responsibly used. So
Yeah.
it's hard. We'll see where it goes. But I am, because I grew up late 80s, I think like the first comic I bought was like a G.I. Joe, like early issue 7, 12, somewhere's around there. So we're talking like late 80s. I grew up on comics, Image Boom. It's all traditional. There were no computers. And speaking of that, I speaking of like we were talking about traditional stuff, um, I want to show, I don't know how much it'll show up on the stream, but so I do my layouts digitally. Speaking of
Yeah.
that, like to me, like that can be the most time consuming thing is to get proportions, layouts. You mentioned
Yeah.
earlier before we got on stream that you're an instructor, art instructor of all things, right? So it's important to like lay down your layouts and then kind of maybe even take a step back, right? Take some time away from the artwork and come back to it. And I was kind of traditionally art schooled. I went to a design school. I had all the anatomy classes. I had to take all these things in color theory. And it's so when you did reach out to me, we were like, hey, we'll collaborate. And I threw together like, oh, here's some layouts, and that was all digitally done. It
Yeah.
was, let's throw Annabelle in there. Let's throw Purity. I want to make sure I nailed her costume. And
Yeah.
then I was like, hey, let me throw an ice pick. So
Yeah.
we'll see how much of this you can actually see. But we have like Ice Pick flying in
Yeah.
there, Annabelle, and then go this way.
Perfect.
We got Purity in there.
Perfect. No, that looks beautiful, man.
And then what I'm going to do, so these are kind of like, so this is a little behind the scenes of process here. You really can't see it too much, but what I want to do is in the background, there's a pier dock in Salem. I mean, I think like most of the city is has like a dock on it.
Yeah.
But there's one specifically that's it kind of came to mind when my wife and I were there. It was like our second to last day there, second to last day. And she was like, we were gonna go. She's a foodie person. She
Yeah.
loves all kinds of food. So, like, all right, there's a seafood place. I was like, I'm not big on seafood, but they got drinks. Okay, I'll go have a drink and eat some food. But there was this little kiosk. It was just outside, random little structure, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to do a boat tour?" And you literally would go on this sailboat, and it was like literally the last like tour of the season because we were in there for Halloween, and we actually went to Salem during Halloween, which was insane. And
Yeah.
I recommend anyone that could visit Salem during Halloween. You'll see things you probably have never seen before. And I was a little reluctant because I'm more of an introvert, as much as I'm out there promoting my work. But my wife was like, "No, you're going on this boat tour. We're going on this thing." And I have to say, it was like totally worth it. But I want to put that dock in the background. So
Yeah.
it's like this. There's a couple restaurants there, a couple buildings. So you'll see like when I send you the final, and I'll link it in. We'll get it all cleaned up for you to color. But yeah, it'll like water with all the pier and all that fun stuff. And yeah, I mean it was super fun to work on this. I don't really do a lot of outside my own company work. I'm always happy to, but I don't put myself out there enough unless someone reaches out to me. Like, yeah, sure, I'll do something. You know what I mean? So, and I really got to like the character. And Purity did definitely like as I was looking at everything you sent, I'm like, this is a badass character. Like, I totally get that vibe of Lady Death of '90s bad chicks, and I like that kind of thing. I like a good strong male character, but I also like strong female characters. I think we're really like Wonder Woman. I mean, we lack that in this male dominated space of comics.
Yeah. Like, I think as weird as it sounds, I think like growing up, it's an interesting example I'm going to say, but like I always loved the idea. There were these two shows that as a kid I used to watch, but then you find out that weirdly enough, there are more dudes watching these shows than like girls. So the first
Yeah.
one for me, like I was a '90s baby. The Powerpuff Girls. I remember weirdly enough, more guys watched the Powerpuff Girls than
Interesting.
girls, even though that was their target market. But then in the early 2000s, there was a show called Totally Spies, and it was
It
it was
sounds
on Cartoon
familiar.
it was on Cartoon Network. It's about
Yeah.
like secret agents in high school. There are these three girls, but it was an interesting show. But again, it was one of those shows that, at least for where I lived, uh, there were a lot of dudes watching this show, and like
Yeah.
maybe they were crushing on the character, maybe I don't know, but like I kind of saw that and was like, why don't I make a character where it doesn't like it doesn't have to, appeal to one person. It like might appeal to,
Hmm.
multiple people. Like for example, like surprisingly enough, I was looking at my demographics. Um and Purity surprisingly has a large female audience. And I'm like, all right, that's interesting because like
Yeah.
usually the bad girl comic genre, especially in today's times, it's like you're treading very, potentially dangerous waters when it comes to drawing like sexy female characters. But
Yeah.
surprisingly, I had a large female audience for Purity. I saw that in the statistics for Purity number two. I remember, but yeah, like it's almost like I wanted to make a character where anyone could really like her. Like and I think they could relate to her maybe turmoil, but
Hmm.
ultimately I just wanted a fun character to work on, and that's how Purity came about. And I also, with the now that you mentioned the email I sent, um, so I send that to like pretty much anyone who works on Purity, and
Okay.
I feel bad initially because I'm like, man, they probably think I'm like a control freak, and I'm like, so for people watching, my Purity email, I call it the Purity email, and it's
Yeah.
because there's so like I'll give like obviously the background of the story of the character, and then it goes to how the hair is supposed to be, how
Hmm.
is the like her mesh is on her right arm and her
Hmm.
left leg, and she has a scar on her right shoulder, and then like it goes down to the whole. If I had to think of two characters that best resemble Purity, it would be Blood Rain and then late Gabrielle from Xena Warrior Princess, but from like the later seasons. And it's like so
Okay.
specific. And I'm like, man, I'm like, I am very specific because like I've heard stories from other people where they'll hire cover artists and they'll just tell them to do whatever. And I'm like,
Well,
I don't
Courtney's
know.
watching. So
Yeah.
Courtney's
Hi,
watching.
Courtney.
She loved the restaurant. She knows that restaurant. So kudos. My wife loved the seafood. She will rave about that restaurant. It was so good. I mean, all the food we had. I prefer the Irish pub that we went to. I mean, that was fantastic. It was another place that had like onion ring on a burger, which was amazing, and an egg. I think they threw everything but the kitchen sink. It was phenomenal. Food is great in Salem.
I
We
still
need to
have to
go
go.
back there.
I still have to go to Salem. I've been to Boston countless times.
Okay.
But like one thing I will say, and I might get banished from New Jersey and New York, but I think Boston has some of the best food I've ever eaten. So I can only imagine Salem.
Yeah. Salem's great, but it's funny because I'm that, I guess, writer, creator, whatever. I sent Courtney some references. I'm like, hey, do what the hell you want. I mean, like, I, what I appreciate with the what I would say info dump of Purity is like it's refreshing because I can be a really OCD about things and a little ADHD. So it's nice to like be able to read all these things and kind of absorb it and say, no, no, you've given a lot of thought into Purity.
Yeah.
Where like even until when we were chatting, it's like I never gave Annabelle an actual superhero costume, right? Ice pick from the get-go. 90s superhero. The dude needs a badass costume, and when in the ice pick trade you see all the cover galleries, and
Yeah.
it's like I'm really particular about ice pick's costume. It serves a purpose, but it also looks really cool, right?
Mhm.
And being a designer professionally, like, you got to have something visually interesting to look at. So doing that pinup with Purity is going to be the first time that fans will be able to see Annabelle's like actual superhero costume. It's a little sexy, but she's a sexy woman. So hey, I mean, if you
Yeah.
got it, flaunt it. And then you'll get the same thing from me, like colors, all these things of like
Yeah.
how that costume is going to kind of look. And really excited to see how that turns out. I think
Yeah.
issue two for Luke, I'm hoping like August, September, October-ish, somewhere's around there. This issue one is done for everybody that's watching. Issue one is done. It's ready to go to the printer. It's just getting this funded, doing any stretch goals, and then really saying, "Hey, I need so many books from the printer," and mailing them all out. I am kind of a one man show. It seems like you're mostly a one man show when you do your Kickstarters,
Mhm.
um, and I really don't set up my Kickstarters until like I have enough substance. So until I have a couple covers, I have like some interior art, so I can kind of build stuff because I like to have more finished products. It's kind
Yeah.
of hard when you like working on stuff and you're like, I only got like 5 images, so I
Yeah.
just wait till I have more. But yeah, I mean,
Especially too
it's
like especially too with covers, like what people don't realize with the Purity covers, there are some Purity covers every issue that dates at least a year and a half before it's launched, and
that's
it's like
crazy.
and it's like I have it already in like locked and loaded, ready to go. But yeah, some of the covers really date back like a year prior, and like no one realized. They think that this person just whipped it up, and I dropped colors on it within like a week's time. I'm like, no, I had this cover for like at least 8 months. So, but I like to. I basically I window shop. I call it window shopping for covers, but
Hmm.
like I pretty much do that almost like again like a year out. Like my surprisingly for issue 4, my cover lineup is pretty locked in right now.
Hmm.
So they're all trickling soon. Like obviously it's not. I know because she's watching, but I literally the first thing I messaged her was Courtney was. It's not a purity campaign without a cover from you. So I need an issue 4 cover, and obviously in issue 5 and on. But but yeah, like that's one cover I'll announce. But I have some pretty. I have a pretty awesome lineup. One dude, I can't give him away, but like, um, I've been friends with him for a while, and he
Hmm.
has a campaign coming up on the 30th, and
Wow.
I'll give everyone watching one hint. Um, he's worked a lot with Zombie Tramp,
Oh, okay.
so
I
he's
mean, I
he,
know a few artists that work on Zombie Tramp. Yeah.
yeah. So he has a campaign coming out on the 30th. That will be the dead giveaway, but I'll leave it there. But yeah, so I have
Nice.
him, and then I have the first ever 3 covers from one artist, and again, another person I've worked with so many times, and here's a hint: it's not Courtney, even though Courtney's doing cover. But it's definitely going to be a fun celebration. I'm going to have a Satan cover. Obviously, it's not a purity campaign without a Satan cover. But yeah, like I've already shopped my
Hmm.
cover for this time around, um, and then I haven't even thought of issue 5, but I know next year I'm gonna have to be shopping for another batch of covers because I'm also launching. And this is gonna sound weirdly worded, and I apologize, but I'm launching a 2-part one shot. so it's like
Okay.
so it's like just 2 issues. I didn't feel like making it into one giant book. But pretty much I'm diving into like grim fairy tales because I know people love grim fairy tales,
Hmm.
and I'm launching a book called Cinderella Fairy God Killer. So it's kind of
Ooh.
like think of Cinderella meets Absolute Wonder Woman. So it's like kind of like a Viking
Hmm.
rendition of the character. She hunts fairy godmothers versus getting
I
her
like
wishes
it.
granted by them. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of fun things happening. It's like one of the first books I'm publishing through Sky Maiden where I'm only writing it. I'm not drawing it.
Okay.
And frankly, I've been going back and forth recently whether or not if I'm going to color it or hire a colorist. Um, but yeah, no, it's like my first like I write Purity, but that book is gonna be like my first like pure writing
Yeah.
credit. Like I'm not
Yeah.
doing anything else, but maybe I'll do the main cover. But yeah, like that's happening. So I'm gonna have to shop for a couple covers for that.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Like because I did ice pick all myself, I was like, I'm just like, I, I didn't feel. It's kind of weird. Like when I talk about social media people and just friends in general, we're friends with people like growing up in the 90s. I never felt like these artists were kind of approachable or attainable to hire, you know and it's kind of weird. Like I've been friends with Courtney for a while, and like I saw she drew Fathom, and I love Fathom. My wife loves Fathom. That was like the first comic my wife read was Fathom, like, or
Yeah,
really that was the first book that got her into comics. And Courtney does a great Fathom, and I was like, hey, look at this, and it was just like a great art. And the thing that like always kind of brings me back is like, yes, there's a lot of rock star artists out there or a lot of like high profile people, but they're also people, right? They're artists. Like if you pay them, they will draw whatever kind of,
And I think
you know.
not just that too, but like I think a lot of those artists, it's like they were in our shoes at one point. They started
Yeah.
like we all started somewhere. We've had our stacks of rejection emails or rejection letters.
Yeah.
So it's kind of you realize that's like, it humanizes them. It's like they're not these big scary people.
Yeah.
One thing I learned from a friend of mine, he's the president of the Cooper School, but he's a long time like DC editor. He's currently on Superman right now, Anthony Marquez. And he always told me one thing. He's like, because like again, like there would be times when I would be nervous asking an artist. He's like, just fucking do it.
Hmm.
He's like, look, there's a 50% chance they're gonna say yes. There's gonna be a 50% chance they're gonna say no, but there's gonna be a 0% chance if you don't ask.
Right.
So it's like I that's kind of like what I live by. But I think it's true though. Like you don't realize how approachable they are. Like
Yeah.
you literally like walk up to like any of them at a convention and like be like, "Hey, you want to work on a cover?" Like, and
Yeah.
like I've done that in the past. Like I think I've done it with some bigger names very early on, and they were kind of skeptical because I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, this person's launching an issue 1. I don't know this person. I've never seen
Right.
this
Right.
book, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to put my stuff on it. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, I totally understand. I'm not mad
Yeah.
about that. I would
Right.
feel the
Yeah.
same way, being like an issue 1 for a book I've never heard of or a person I've never met in my life or talked to. I'm like, so I understand, but now you just realize there's it's not that scary to reach out to them. And frankly, this time around, I've gotten a few messages from bigger cover artists reaching out to me asking if I'm looking for a
Yeah.
cover artist and they would love to do a cover for me. And I'm like, holy shit, wow, okay, hi, how are you? Thank
Yeah.
you. Like
Well,
I didn't expect you to reach out to me, but I'm like, okay. And then like it's also like such a weirdly gratifying feeling hearing like, oh, I've been like looking at Purity for a while now, and I've been like watching. I'm like, that's really awesome.
it is it, and that's the best feeling, and that's what I tell people. Like when I meet people at shows, I've talked to like parents with like young children or teenagers, and they're just like, oh, my daughter or my son's an artist and they love to draw, and I'm like, keep doing it, just keep doing it. I don't listen to the haters, don't. And you'll find that, even my sister, who is more kind of arts and crafty stuff, and she's done some craft shows, and I'm like, keep doing it, because it's really gratifying when people
Yeah.
will say, hey, I'm waiting. Like when I just did Crypticon, which is a horror comic convention out here in Seattle a few weeks ago, and I was like promoting Luke, and it's like, the show wasn't that great, but I mean, that's with the whole economic landscape, which is a whole different topic for another day, right? But I met some really cool people, and it's just that same thing of like, keep doing it.
Yeah.
It may not be your scene, but keep doing it.
Yeah, like, and that's another thing too. And I even tell this to my students, even in regards for indie comics. I call this era that we're in right now, this time that we're in. I'm like, it's the second indie renaissance, and I call it
Yeah,
that because
I could see that.
we haven't had this big of a boom in indie comics since the 90s, where
Yeah.
we're not. I wouldn't say we're at a point where you have like one shot characters getting like an action figure deal and then one gets like a Game Boy Color game. But like it's at the point where you're noticing more people are really invested in independent characters. And like, again, I'm friends with a lot of DC, primarily DC artists and editors.
Hmm.
And I hope none of them are watching because I'm a DC kid at heart if I had to choose the two. But like, we're at a time where it's like you could tell on both sides that it's almost like they don't know what to do with their characters, and I think people are
Yeah.
getting bored. I'll tell you, I'm bored of seeing every character get a spider suit or a spider
Yep.
sona and
Yep.
like
Same.
an iron suit, and I'm like, I think fans want something new and interesting. So we're at a really good point. Like even if anyone's watching and they're ever questioning whether or not they should like bring back their character they drew in like the early 2000s or the 90s. I'm like,
Do it.
yes, do
Do
it.
it.
No question. I mean, we have
Yep.
so many tools to do it. Like you could do it the old school method and just go straight to print, do it at, like promote it at shows, or now you have crowdfunding. You could
Yeah.
literally put it out. But ultimately the time is now if you want to put out your own comics. And I think
Yeah.
it's not really like it's there's no better of a time to do it.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
It definitely is a renaissance of indie created books, and that's the thing. Like, even I did Ice Pick. I reached out to some friends I had at the time, local artists, things of that nature, and I was like, okay, I did a bunch of variants when I did those as Kickstarters. Those are no longer available, so it's one of those things. Like, Kickstarter is a very exclusive niche kind of market of people that
Yeah.
will, it's collectors. A lot of it is collectors. And,
Yeah.
then I started doing, when I did Annabelle, and I was like tossing that idea around, and, I didn't want to do it myself. Like you mentioned, you're writing, you're that next story next year, and you're just going to be a writer, maybe colors. I was like, you know what? I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to save, I'm going to figure things out, and I'm going to hire an art team. And that's where Sergio came into play for
Mhm.
Annabelle. He threw down some general like character models. I'm like, damn, dude, that's it. I don't care what you cost, like you're hired. Like,
Yeah.
you nailed, and you saw the art from Annabelle. Like, it's
Yeah.
so 90s, it's so nice and well done. And then same thing with Luke, like it's a whole different type of genre. So the artwork has to match that genre. And that's what I try to do with
Yeah.
my books.
But I also think another cool thing what you're doing is that like you're offering something new for pretty much like every like you're hitting every aspect. Like for example, like let's call a scenario like maybe you get a reader who was never really a fan of the 90s
Hmm.
or like that 90s style, but then they find Luke and it has like cool black and white horror. Like you're kind of like broadening your your stories to like all these different markets. So it's like like there are probably companies out there um that have like even like a young adult comic book, and then they have an adult comic book under the
Yeah.
same publisher, and then they have like a really young kid children's book level. So it's like you're offering so many different things that like you wouldn't have to worry if someone's like, oh, if this is all that he's producing, like I guess I'll just go elsewhere. I'm like, no, he has a horror book, he has
Yeah.
a superhero, like so it's like it's that's kind of a cool approach.
And that was kind of the idea. Like, once I was about halfway through Ice Pick, and I'm like, all right, what the hell's next? Like, you always got to have that next thing. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do next? Well, I have this really cool, Ice Pick's fiance, Annabelle. Like, she in Ice Pick, like the whole story is like she didn't know that he was alive. Like, they tried to kill him, the mob tried to kill him, they failed. He got his superpowers, which end up, it wasn't even superpowers, it was magic, because he's part of this magic, you know entity of beings, and so he's a magical person. And he thought it was like, I just had superpowers. And it's like, okay, I have this other character, what can I do with her? And then I have this other character, Luke, what can I do with him? And it really organically evolved into telling different genres. But I think what's nice for fans, even if they, like you're saying, they do like maybe the black and white horror, is they're like, okay, I like this story. What else does this writer, publisher, what do they have to offer? And
Mhm.
maybe they saw Annabelle and they're like, oh, that's not my cup of tea. But there's an adventure of Luke in Annabelle. There's an adventure of Luke in Ice Pick. So to them, it's almost like you can go back and read those adventures, and you may not necessarily like the genre, but you're gonna be like, I like that character. I want
Yeah.
to read what that dude is doing. Like, how did he get to where he's at in Salem? Like, what got him here? So it's kind of like old and new. And I consciously try to write stories to entice new readers, but also to have those new readers go back and say, well, what else is there? And eventually it's just going to be an Ice Pick kind of storyline with all three characters. And it's just going to be them like tackling supernatural things, and stumbling into this underground world of supernatural bad people, things, entities, you know.
Yeah.
So I already have like the next story written after Luke, and then I actually have a one shot written after that. So it's always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? So
Yeah, I'm
um,
the same way. Like, I one of my students pointed out too, where I was like explaining to her like all the purity lore and like what my future
mhm,
plans are, and they even suggested like do like the Tolkien approach with like Lord of the Rings, where it's like Satan is like the big bad. So
yeah,
keep her as like an anchor, so that way you could tell all these different stories in the universe, like people
right.
rummaging through Earth or like the underworld, and like Satan is still there. And it's
Hmm.
like, but it allows you to like kind of like world build, and I'm kind of doing that now, essentially with like there's a character that we're going to be introduced to at the very end of issue 4, and she is going to be an ongoing character where where there all I could say is really for now is like where there are demons there are angels. So
Hmm.
we're playing around with characters like from lighter toned things. um so I mean, again, it's just world building, and it's like
Hmm.
expanding that universe. Like, essentially, like I want that roster of like all these characters that kind of like coincide with each other, and it kind of gives like a cool universe, and it gives room, like we mentioned, like it gives like room for like the one shot story of them, or it gives a room
Yeah.
where it's like you could take a break from focusing on Purity's story and focus on them. So, but yeah, no, it's a very good approach.
That's what I am doing with Luke. Like it's one of those things where the next story is actually called Ghost Stories, and I've
Mhm.
kind of shown off the cover that I'm doing for that. And it's basically after, it's kind of this weird injunction point where after after Annabelle issue 4, well, we see Luke go off with his gaggle of girls in the Uber to go back to his place or drop them off wherever because they were all kidnapped. And then we just have like Annabelle and Ice Pick and they're Adam, Ice Pick is his name's Adam, but they're like, okay, well, I guess we just go back home. Like we finally have this moment of reprieve where we can like, wait a minute, I thought you were dead in Ice Pick, right? In that storyline. And so you're not, but then I got kidnapped like literally the next day. So we've never had this moment where we can just kind of process that you're alive, right? And the Ghost Story is going to be the one after Luke. And it's this period between issue 4 of Annabelle and the beginning of Luke issue 1. And it's what happens with these two characters once they go back home to their apartment. Like, and they encounter a supernatural entity, so to me, like, supernatural creatures, beings are just intertwined in my story,
Mhm.
whether it's gods and demons, angels, and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny you mentioned like angels. I don't know how well we can see this, but that's issue 4 of Ice Pick, and it's literally Michael and a demon.
Oh wow.
I mean, it's my crummy artwork, but needless to say, you
Wow,
know
that's
the,
awesome.
it's that the archangel Michael shows up and he's just like, hey, I'm here to save you guys, and demon's like, no, that kind of like 90s angst of comics.
Mhm.
um but yeah, I mean, I tackle like everything, and hopefully we'll see, we'll get this book funded, maybe hit some stretch goals, and I'm just one of those guys. I've been doing it for several years, publishing my own stuff. I'm gonna keep doing it, hell or high water. I like doing it. It's a really fun creative relief. Maybe branch out and do covers for other,
Yeah.
any other indie creators out there. Do more collaborations like with yourself. I've done a couple other ones before, but you know, I enjoy it. I think fans like it. I think they like the creativity. You touched on a really interesting point where there's not a whole lot of creativity, new things happening with like the big two.
Mhm.
Um, I'm kind of more of a Marvel guy, I guess. I'm Batman. Like I'm all in on Batman's my dude, but then like overall, I think I like Marvel characters, Spider-Man, Wolverine, X-Men kind of stuff
Yeah.
more. I think that's just honestly what I grew up with, right time, right place.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah.
impressioned with. But yeah, I mean, it's been super fun chatting with you. I think we'll probably wrap this up here. We've been hitting it about an hour. So
Yeah, it was a pleasure, man.
well, I appreciate that. And anyone else out there watching or watches this later, any other indie creators, I will say, feel free. I'm happy to do live streams like this and promote, people like Nick have a really cool idea and a story and character I really enjoy. And I'm gonna have to get some physical copies from you. So we'll have to work that
Yeah,
out. Um,
absolutely.
I think you ordered Annabelle trade, so that hopefully should be there tomorrow, Saturday.
Perfect.
So yeah, enjoy that. I threw in another goodie there for you. And yeah, I mean, we'll just keep doing this. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think I'm just gonna keep plugging along, keep telling fun stories and see where it goes. And maybe one day get into distribution. I know there's a lot of big things going on with distribution now, and I think a lot of companies are starting to take notice, like you mentioned,
Yeah,
notice of indie books. We may not sell 100,000 copies, but hey, a couple thousand
yeah.
I'll be good
I
with.
think it just speaks greater value of like, if in a world of Batman and Superman, there are like a chunk of people who like just know Annabelle or know Ice Pick or know Luke.
Yeah,
Like, so it's like even if it's like 900 people, I'll be like, I'll take it. 900 people
all
know my
day.
character.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I had a guy come up at Crypticon and was like, "Hey," it was funny because he was talking to like my booth neighbor about some things, and you just end up hearing what your booth neighbors talk about. But then we started. I kind of like we all joined in, and I was like, "God, he looks so familiar," but I didn't want to like be odd, like awkward, and say anything. But then he's like, "Yeah, so when are you bringing out more Ice Pick books, dude?" I was like,
like
okay."
I was like, I'll never forget. I had an interaction like that at MegaCon, and like I like bumped into. Are you familiar with Sora Sung?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So like I bumped into her, and right there she's like, "Oh, "You're Nick Capone. You drop Purity." I'm like, "That's me." I'm
yeah.
like, "You're Sora Sung." But it's like the coolest thing ever
Nice.
because in my mind I'm like, "Wait, she knows me."
Yeah.
And then in recent times, a friend of mine, Bill McKay, he's on a podcast with Dan Mendoza, and apparently Dan pulled up the Purity #3 campaign, and I'm like,
What?
Dan Mendoza
Nice.
knows who I am. Like,
Nice.
what? But like, yeah, no, he really liked the Josh Howard cover. I'm like, huh, Dan Mendoza likes my Josh Howard Purity cover. I'm like, that
Yeah.
I don't know, but I was like so like thrown off guard. I'm like, wait, Dan Mendoza, Zombie Tramp, Dan Mendoza.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, that guy.
he pulled out my campaign on his live stream. Like, that's freaking awesome. Like, Dan, if you're
It,
watching this, thank you so much. But
it is
yeah, no,
really cool.
yeah, no, I hear he's a really cool dude. Like, I've seen a couple of streams of him. I think a very, very long time ago. I don't think he remembers, but I think him and I were on the same stream, and
Mm,
he was kind of like in and out, like quickly, like, "Hey guys, I'm only gonna be here for like 20 minutes. Like, I gotta like." But he
yeah.
was showing like a trailer for an upcoming Zombie Tramp issue, and like he was so cool. Like he was really, he's a really cool dude.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing is like, I mean, sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes, but it's also like, I try to be that humble, approachable person at
Yeah,
a show in live streams or just in general. Like,
yeah,
I'm an open book. I'll talk about anything. I'll give you my opinion on anything, whether whether we agree or disagree. I mean, I'm
yeah.
just like I'm genuine, and I
We
think,
were,
yeah. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was always told like even too like at conventions like there's always like a certain like kind of mannerism I do. Like, so it's
Hmm.
like I always stay professional and contained and stuff, but like,
Yeah.
you basically you were taught in school where it was like you want other artists like to not look at you as a fanboy, but as like a colleague. And I'm like, all
Hmm.
right. And like, and I'm usually pretty good with that. But then it was at the same show at MegaCon. I kind of went full. And it was a very long time since like I had prior, but like I did fanboy when I met. He's one of my idols growing up, Mark Silvestri. So
Oh,
it's like when I
such a
met
cool
him,
guy.
I'm like I couldn't be like,
Yeah.
"Hi, how are you, sir?" I'm like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, you're Mark Silvestri!"
Right.
Like and I remember he told me like he signed my Witchblade #2 cover, and he's like, "Oh, like Witchblade's coming back," and I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Hmm.
He's like, "Yeah, it's coming back in the fall, and then like the Darkness is coming back in the spring or something." I'm like, "That's
Yeah.
awesome." I'm like, "Thanks, Mark Silvestri." Like, but I was like, so like, oh shit, I met Mark Silvestri.
It is a weird thing, and even like in the late '90s when Fathom and the whole like image boom kind of happened. Well, a little bit after that, but my wife was getting into it, and at the time we were just dating. But she's like, okay, she moved in with me, and we originally from Cleveland, Ohio. We would drive to Chicago to do Wizard World Chicago, and we did that for several years, and I just hit all the guys, like as many people as I could meet at Mark Silvestri, like Eric Ebos, Eric. I'm gonna
Yeah,
butcher his
I
last
never
name,
could
but
pronounce his
Ebos.
last name, so I just say
Yeah,
Ebas.
yeah, and like I met Rob Liefeld, which in my experience, I have to say, Rob is a super nice guy. Like I know he gets a ton of hate. I
So
never
you
had a bad
see,
experience.
I am what they call a Rob Liefeld apologist, and why I
Hmm.
say that is because say what you want about his art, fine.
Yeah.
I have a soft spot for it, but not
Yep.
just that, but like people need to realize everyone who hates on Rob Liefeld, he's laughing his way to the bank. He's like,
All day,
he's done things that no other creator has done, like no
ever.
other artist. Like he's really like, and especially too in the '90s, he was so young. He was like in his early 20s. He's achieving all of this. So I'm like,
He
you got to give the man credit where credit's due.
Yeah, like okay, he was 17 when, if I'm not mistaken, when he got hired on Hawk and Dove in
Yeah,
DC. So like the dude was young. We all kind of like cut him a little slack here. Like when I was 17, you saw some of the crappy shitty artwork I was doing at like 16, 17. Like he was light years ahead of
yeah,
anyone at that age. And yeah,
yeah,
so I would probably say I'm also one of those apologists, but yeah, Mark Silvestri, super cool guy. Michael Turner, huge influence. Got to
yeah.
meet him
Rest in
several
peace. Like
times.
he
Rest,
was.
yeah, it's such a great guy. All the guys at Aspen and any of the women that work there, we got to meet a lot of them. But I still do shows as a fan.
Yeah,
When we were doing SummerCon, it was crazy because quick story, my wife always does these shows. She's kind of she's like my booth witch. She's got a little pin that says booth witch, and she's amazing. She'll do the shows with me. And I saw like Jim Lee was going to be at SummerCon. I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry. I got to leave you. I have to go meet Jim Lee. And she was so sweet. She's like, go. I know that's like one of your top three artists, right? Him and McFarlane. And I'm just like, yeah, I got to go. Jim Lee was so nice, so much fun to meet. Had him sign
yeah,
a couple books. It's got a photo with him. And it's just these weird interactions that we have. Like I tell people at shows, like I'm a fan first. Like when I see an artist like yourself, Courtney, because she's on stream, like any other artist, even people that I had do ice pick variants, no one knows of these people. They're not professional artists. Like one of them was like my high school buddy where we did a 3D cover, like a legit 3D cover. You need the 3D glasses to look at the cover.
yeah,
And like no one knows these people. The one guy that I knew at shows, I did, he was at shows for a few years. He's not drawing really much anymore,
yeah,
and it's just like, but I'm a fan. Like I like your art. I want you to do a cover of my character, right?
yeah,
So I will pay you to do this.
yeah,
So it is a lot of fun, and doing shows is a lot of fun. I'd love to do like East Coast stuff. I'd love to do, there's one in Cleveland, speaking of shows. Maybe I kind of
yeah.
do a trip in Cleveland to visit
Yeah.
family, but also do a Comic Con.
Yeah, no, I
I'm gonna
mean,
ditch my
look,
family.
like Jersey, Connecticut, even Boston, they have like a line of like pretty larger scale shows. Like definitely,
Yeah,
like I
Boston's
think when
huge.
people immediately think of East Coast, are like, oh yeah, New York Comic Con. I'm like,
No.
low key, I'll be honest from my experience, I hate New York Comic Con. Like people are like, "Why? It's like the biggest con in the world." I'm like, exactly. Try
Yeah.
tabling there. It's so overwhelming. You're
Right.
overstimulated. Like I was tabled with Sonoma Publishing, and it was a very small booth, but like it's draining. It's a 4 day
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
It's like. Yeah, I pretty much go nonverbal by Sunday. I'm like, no one talk to me, please. I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a dick, but I'm like, I am
Yeah.
so tired.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a very big show. But obviously people recognize it, same with San Diego, but like a lot of the smaller shows are where it's at. Like
Yep.
I mean,
I agree.
obviously, like I said, the Jersey shows are always great. Wicked Con Boston was okay. It was an okay show. I think, unfortunately, it's been overrun by Fan Expo Boston, which is a big show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I spoke to Courtney about that a few times. Like we talked about, like, oh, are you coming to Wicked Comic Con? And she's like, no. but
Yeah.
but yeah, like
If
there's
I
a
can
lot of
make it
larger
back
shows.
out to Boston, I'll hit you guys up. We'll have to head
One
out one
hundred
night.
percent. I would love that.
But yeah, it's Seattle's another. It's just an odd little just area. Like the metropolitan area of Seattle has like a lot of cool shows. Some smaller ones, some larger ones. I'm with you though. Like Emerald City, I'll apply next year. We'll see if I get in because it's all curated. But by day 4, I'm done. Like I am
Mhm.
just checked out, and you're just like, okay. I mean, you could do $5,000 in sales, and I'm just like, like
Yeah, no,
I'm
like
just,
I
it's exhausting.
I pretty much am like, I need like the whole, like maybe up to like Wednesday of the following week to like fully recuperate,
Hmm.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
especially too if you're traveling. Like when I was at MegaCon, I loved MegaCon. That's a very big
Hmm.
show, but
Yeah.
like you gotta go fly back home, get
Hmm.
situated, and it's like a whole process. So that's like I'm like you, where it's like if I could stay local or maybe go like
Yeah.
a state or two away, that's fine. But like, you'll see people going, like they live in, like, I don't know, Texas, and like, yeah, I'm gonna be at Tokyo Comic Con in Japan, and I'm like,
Like what the fuck?
like,
No.
you have fun, Like
Yeah.
that's, I'm like overwhelmed thinking that. I'm like, oh, I couldn't do that. But
Yeah.
like,
We
look,
did a Spokane one that was like Spokane, for those that don't know, like Washington state is huge. I know Texas is like the biggest state, I get it, but like this was a 5 hour plus drive from like Western Washington to Eastern Washington. And I'm like, I did it for like 2 or 3 years. I'm like, I can't. Like, it's just too much. Like the drive, the hotel stay. Like to me, like if you say you got 5, 6 hour drive, West Coast, like you're hitting like 4 states within
yeah,
like 5 hour drive.
that's like my limit. I'm like, if it's over 5 hours, like
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll go like to the show venue. I'm like, oh, like, are you gonna pay for my flight? Just kidding. But
Yeah. Can I be a guest?
like there are those occasions where it's like really nice, like they invite you to shows where it's like,
Hmm.
all right, cool, I don't have to pay for a table, but it's like out of state shows, I'm like, oh, I have to still pay for airfare
Yeah.
and everything. But I'm
One
like,
day.
you use that Rob Liefeld money on him, and like, sprinkle maybe like 100, 200 on me.
Yeah. Well, one day we'll get the red carpet
Well,
treatment.
what's interesting? I was talking to Justin Hunt about this, where he was talking about like shows should have, and I get that it's probably just the small press area shows, but like
Hmm.
more indie publishers should like combine, like buy a big massive booth at like one of these conventions and just have like a line of like all of us just like at one table. I'm like, I'm shocked no one's really done that. Like make a whole indie
Well,
station.
yeah, it's nice. I did Rose City in Portland. I haven't done it the last couple years with the whole like Rona and all that other nonsense that was going on. But like I did it a few years early 2020, 2019, I think. And they had, it was like a maker's mark. or Makers Market or something, and it was all like as a comic book creator, as you're saying, it's a Comic Con, but this was all like handmade. Like some stuff was painted, some stuff was crocheted. It was like knitted, and it had like embroidery kind of thing, like just the gamut of like it almost became like a craft fair in this little area. But that's a good idea. Like it's interesting because you would have to spend you'd have to have such a large space to have like five, six, seven indie creators all within this, 40 by 40 booth or something, pretty large. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The landscape is changing. Maybe one day
Yeah,
we'll get that. I don't know.
yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. Are you gonna have other per, I'm sorry, purity issues available for the launch in August?
Yes. So what I'm going to be doing, and now that Courtney's watching this, I'm going to actually be offering all of her covers she's done so far. So period number
Hmm.
1, 2, and 3. So it's a really good opportunity. So I'm going to be offering physical copies of that. I always offer digital tiers as well, just to I
Hmm.
have a lot of international backers,
Same.
so it allows them to have the experience of the book without paying for like $40 in shipping. But I
Hmm.
still will have physical copies available, and then obviously issue 4, I'm going to also have physical copies available.
Okay. No, that's good to know. I mean, I always do the same thing. I always try to offer physical copies along with digital copies. Is that going to be like a package deal where it'll just be like a Courtney
Yeah.
reward tier or something?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
So the like this upcoming campaign, it's a perfect balance of like offering the reissue of Purity, but it's also like
Hmm.
highlighting Courtney's art. Like it's a lot of the tiers are centered around Courtney's cover, and then like if you want you know her issue 2 cover and her issue 3 cover, you can. So a lot. It's definitely it's gonna be a very quick campaign. It's gonna be a 14-day campaign, so it's only two
Okay.
weeks. So a very low goal. We're just kind of paying just to get the books printed and everything and shipped
Yeah.
out. So but yeah, and like all the files are there. The book's obviously done. So it's just a brand new cover. So very quick, and that will be the last campaign I'm throwing this year, and then yeah, then we start fresh in March.
Nice, nice. Well, it's been a lot of fun catching up with you.
Likewise,
We're
dude.
we're gonna have this collab thing with Annabelle and Purity and Ice Pick.
Hmm.
We'll promote that as well. Again, like Nick's got some things coming later this year, early next year. Seems like you got a lot going on. Luke issue 1 is on Kickstarter. You can do the link. I don't know if the ticker's
Yeah,
clickable,
please.
but feel free to, go check it out, watch the video. We didn't watch the video. I want to leave that for those that are on Kickstarter. It'll be fun. I love producing videos for my Kickstarters. Like that's one thing I didn't even get into is I do all the
Keep
videos for my Kickstarter.
that.
But I like doing that. It's like this weird little thing that just takes me outside of like comic book art. Um, yeah, we have two cats as well, so I
Yeah.
totally feel the cat thing.
Yeah,
W-
he's chewing up on the corner of my carpet before when we were talking. I'm like, stop that. But then
Yeah,
like sometimes Zuko will make an appearance
I,
somewhere. Yeah.
I I have my office door closed because I promise you, my our black cat, who's a one-eyed black cat that we named Captain Blackbeard. He will
Oh,
absolutely be in here like wanting to like walk around and just purr and be the sweet. He's a lover. He's the sweetest cat ever. Maybe one day we'll put him on stream. But yeah, it's been fun chatting with you. I think we'll wrap this up here and you know, keep an eye out for Purity. Go look at Luke, old school black and white horror comic if you love that fairies, vampires, supernatural stuff. And we'll see where this campaign goes,
yeah.
and really appreciate you hanging out with me for a while, and
That's been a
hopefully we'll do
blast,
some
man.
more.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So for everyone out there, I appreciate all the people out there watching, all those that will see this later, hopefully, but we live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. So It was fun having Courtney kind of chime in on some Salem stuff. She mentioned that she visits Salem quite a few times a year, and if I lived East Coast, I would absolutely go there more often. I
Mhm.
love it, but it's been fun, and we'll catch you guys on the next stream.
Catch you guys later.